Okay, good afternoon. So today we're looking at Searle's famous argument about the Chinese room, an argument against the possibility of artificial intelligence, as it's usually thought of. There's no lecture on Friday, and on Monday we'll look at an article by Frith that isn't in the textbooks. I'll mail this round and put it on the B-Space resources this afternoon. Okay, so that's no lecture on Friday and Frith on schizophrenia on Monday, when we look at some real-world applications of these ideas. So a lot of the dream in artificial intelligence has traditionally been you want to make a computer that speaks English. You want to make a computer that would be intelligent, and part of that would be understanding an ordinary human language the way ordinary humans do. So how would you know when you'd done it? I mean, if you're an AI guy and your task is get a computer where, as it were, English is the highest level programming language, then when have you won? How would you know when you had a computer that was speaking English? How do you know anyone speaks English? Yes?
We would know that the computer was speaking English when it produced the same result as the person speaking English.
Very good. Did you just do that right now? Yeah, you just invented the Turing test. Yeah, right. So I think this is just playing back to you what you just said, that if you have the computer behind the screen and the person behind the screen and someone able to chat with both the computer and the person, then you don't know which one's which. You can't tell which is the computer and which is the person. Yeah, is that catching your idea? Yeah. It's a pity you didn't think of that earlier. That is the Turing test for intelligence. Here's Turing saying this: I believe that in about 50 years' time, it will be possible to program computers to make them play the imitation game so well that an average interrogator will not have more than 70% chance of making the right identification after 5 minutes of questioning. I believe at the end of the century, the use of words and general educated opinion will have altered so much that one will be able to speak of machines thinking without expecting to be contradicted. That wasn't quite right, the last thing, but you see what he was thinking anyway, and that was in 1950. So that's a good test, right? It's hard to see what better a test you could have for whether a computer is intelligent. Is that right? Is there a better test? Any advance in the last comment? Okay, there's no better test. Well, okay, Searle's point is that test doesn't work. That's an important test because it seems like the only one we have, but the point is not going to work. That isn't how you're going to tell. So suppose you just say very abstractly, what is a computer? I mean, what's a computer anyway? Here's Searle. A typical computer rule will determine when a machine is in a certain state, and it has that when a machine is in a certain state and has a certain symbol on its tape, then it will perform a certain operation, such as erasing the symbol or printing another symbol, and then enter into another state, such as moving the tape one square to the left. So this is basically a description of a computer as a Turing machine. Yeah, and is that a familiar structure? Yeah, does anyone recognize this? Suppose the machine is in a certain state. Let us call it state S1. Then what the description of it as a computer says, there's a rule that says that when it's in S1, it's got a certain symbol in its tape, then given a particular input, it'll perform a certain operation, such as when it gets that symbol on its tape as the input, it will perform a certain operation, such as erasing that symbol or printing another symbol. So it'll give a motor output and then enter another state, such as moving the tape one square to the left. So the machine's in a certain state, and then it gets a symbol as input. Then it'll perform a motor output, such as erasing that symbol or producing another symbol, and then go into another state. So you get state S1, you get a sensory input, such as getting a particular symbol. Then what happens next? You get a motor output, and you go into a different state, S2. Do we recognize that? It is nothing but our old friend, functionalism. Yes, the computer model of the mind is a version of functionalism. I won't work through all these examples, but you can see how it goes, right? It's the same structure every time, the same very general abstract structure. So the computer model of the mind is functionalism, together with the idea that symbols are the key to what's going on. That these states can be more precise, more specifically characterized as states involving symbols. It's because you have physical symbols in there that the machine is working the way it does. So it's just a form of functionalism, the computer model of the mind. This is still far and away the most dominant model of the mind. You listen to any lecture in vision science and psychology, for example, and you will find that's the model that's being used. Are there any psychology majors here? Can anyone confirm that? Is the computer model of the mind popular in psychology? Take it from me. The computer model of the mind is popular in psychology. So just to spell that out, when you're asking, you've got all those states, S1, S2, and so on, and you ask, well, why do they work the way they do? The answer that's been given is because they involve signs. Those signs have particular shapes, and it's because the signs are the particular physical characteristics that they do that your states as a thinker are functioning as they do. And that's a familiar idea, really. If someone stands up right now and shouts, fire, then that will have a certain impact on everyone. And it's because a particular physical shape was produced. If people rush for the door and getting that, it's because you got that physical sign as input, and then you gave all that motor activity, rushing to the door or whatever it is, as output. And what the computer model is trying to do is to specify all these signs purely physically. You're not allowed to say, and suppose the computer understands the sign. And if you suppose the computer understands the sign, then sure, then that will be enough for an understanding of a language. But that's not what we were trying to do. We were trying to explain what it is to understand signs. So all you need for an understanding of language is to have a whole bunch of shapes. And then, because those shapes have the physical characteristics they do, you move into further states. The symbols in a computer language have no meaning. They have no semantic content. They're not about anything. If you think of a string of zeros and ones in some programming language, they don't mean anything. They don't have it stand for anything. They're specified just in terms of their physical shapes, their formal or syntactical structure. Zeros and ones are just numerals. They don't stand for numbers. So the computer model of the mind at this stage is fairly easy, I think, to see what it is. It's functionalism plus the idea that what makes the box and arrow connections that the functionalist describes is the physical sentences inside the boxes. The whole computer was set up so that those physical sentences will have particular causal characteristics. They'll generate particular other states and the production of further signs. So that's a little bit abstract, but I hope it's recognizable. Plain as day. So the dominant view in psychology in the last 50 50 years, 60 years, I guess, has been that roughly the brain is a computer, that the physiology of the brain is like the hardware, and the mind is the software of the brain. That's how you understand the mind scientifically. But if Searle's right, this just can't be right. That whole model must be just wrong. So here's a Chinese room objection. Imagine a bunch of computer programmers have written a program that will enable a computer to simulate the understanding of Chinese. So the computer's given a question in Chinese. This is what you're doing. You're thinking, well, the brain is kind of like this. You give me, if I'm a native Chinese speaker, you give me a question in Chinese. That makes me go into a particular physical state and give a particular sign as output. So if I'm given a question, I'm going to look at that physical sign. I'm going to match that against my memory or against my database, and then I'll use that to produce another sign, and I'll go into another state. So that's what's going on with people when they speak a language. That's what's going on with you or me right now when we talk across the class. And then we've got this test. If the computer's answers are as good as those of a native Chinese speaker, then the computer is going to understand Chinese. Because that's all that the native Chinese speaker is doing. That's all your brain is doing. So that's all the computer has to do too. Okay, that's the idea. Both very important ideas. That's the test for whether you're understanding, and that's all that has to be going on inside you. Because what else could be going on inside you? Well, imagine you are locked in a room, and in this room are several baskets full of Chinese symbols. You're given a rule book in English for manipulating these symbols. So Searle is taking it for granted here. Suppose you don't know a word of Chinese. Suppose it's Searle himself who doesn't know, let's suppose, a word of Chinese. Yeah? Searle has nonetheless a certain sensitivity to the language. The rule might say, take the squiggle squiggle sign out of basket number 1 and put it next to a squoggle sign from basket number 2. Well, you see what he means, right? He doesn't know what the sign means. He's just saying that's all there is to say about the shape. So if you, as a native English speaker who don't know any Chinese at all, are looking at the book, it might say something like this. If you see that shape followed by this shape, followed by that shape, then produce those shapes as output. Okay, so that's what you're getting. So here is Searle himself in the Chinese room, speaking only English, surrounded by baskets of Chinese symbols and a huge rule book for manipulating all those symbols. Then, of course, if the rule book is big enough, long enough, accurate enough, he can be outputting answers. If you post him in a question through the mailbox in Chinese, if you as a native speaker of Chinese post him in a question through the mailbox, then you will get back out, a sensible answer. Right? That's okay. You will definitely get a sensible answer back out because the book is really good.